Have you ever found yourself lying in bed in the absolute silence of the deep night, staring up into the darkness of your room, when suddenly a question hits you with the physical weight of a falling stone? It is not a trivial question about tomorrow's to-do list, or a regret about yesterday's conversation. It is the question, the one that humanity has whispered into the void for as long as we have had language to shape the sound. What happens to me when the biology stops? Not what happens to my body, for we know the chemistry of decay, but what happens to this feeling of being inside a mind, looking out at the world? It is a question that usually brings a tightening of the chest, a flash of primal fear, or a deep, melancholy vertigo. We are taught that consciousness is a flicker of light between two eternal darknesses. We are told that before we were born, there was nothing, and after we die, there will be nothing. We are told that we are merely the accidental output of a biological machine, a ghost in the meat that vanishes the moment the power is cut. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the standard model of reality that we have accepted for the last century is missing a fundamental piece of the puzzle? What if the sensations you feel right now, the warmth of the blankets, the rhythm of your breathing, the hum of your own existence, are not generated by the brain, but are received by it? What if consciousness is not a biological accident, but a fundamental property of the universe itself, as basic as gravity, as ancient as electromagnetism, and perhaps just as indestructible? Tonight, we are going to walk to the very edge of what science knows and peer into the mist of what it is just beginning to suspect. We are going to explore the possibility that the thing you call you is written in a code that the universe does not allow to be deleted. But before we take this first step into the quantum deep, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Theodore, the researcher, and I am honored to be your guide on this quiet journey into the unknown. If you enjoy exploring the deepest mysteries of our cosmos, if you find peace in understanding the vastness that surrounds us, and if you want to support more content that blends science with the gentle rhythm of contemplation, I invite you to please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. It is a small gesture from you, but it means the world to us, and it helps us continue to build this library of wonder together. Thank you for being here. Now, let us relax, let go of the tension in our shoulders, and turn our gaze inward to the mystery of the mind itself. To understand why some physicists are now suggesting that consciousness might be immortal, we first have to understand why standard science has insisted for so long that it is mortal. The prevailing view of modern neuroscience, the one you will find in almost every textbook, is called materialism or physicalism. It is a powerful, logical, and evidence-based view. It says that you are your brain, nothing more, nothing less. According to this view, the rich tapestry of your inner life, the memory of your mother's voice, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, the abstract concept of the number 7, the feeling of love, all of this is simply the exhaust fume of chemical reactions. Inside your skull, encased in darkness and bone, sits a 3-pound lump of wet tissue. It is made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and trace amounts of other elements. It is fundamentally stardust organized into a very complex shape. This structure contains roughly 86 billion neurons. These neurons are tiny, tree-like structures that communicate with each other by blasting charged particles, sodium, potassium, calcium, across their cell membranes. When these ions rush in and out, they create a tiny electrical spike, a voltage change. This is the language of the brain, a binary code of fire or don't fire. The materialist argument is that if you have enough of these neurons firing in complex enough patterns, consciousness simply emerges. It is like the wetness of water. A single water molecule is not wet, but put trillions of them together, and wetness emerges as a property. In this view, your soul is just the music played by the orchestra of your neurons. And the terrifying implication of this view is obvious. If you smash the violin, the music stops. If the neurons die, if the oxygen supply is cut off and the chemical fires go out, the consciousness must, by definition, cease to exist. There is nowhere for it to go, just as the speed of a car has nowhere to go when the car is crushed into a cube of metal. The speed is gone. The music is gone. You are gone. This is the lights-out theory of death. It is rational. It is clean. It fits with much of what we see in hospitals every day. When the brain is damaged, the mind is damaged. If you damage the area for speech, the person loses language. If you damage the area for memory, the past dissolves. It seems to prove that the mind is entirely dependent on the brain tissue. However, there is a problem, a very big, very stubborn problem that has haunted philosophers and scientists for centuries. It is called the hard problem of consciousness. The term was coined by the philosopher David Chalmers, but the mystery is ancient. The problem is this. You can explain the mechanics of the brain perfectly. You can map every single neuron, trace every electrical impulse, measure every chemical exchange, and yet you are still left with an unbridged gap. Why does that processing feel like something? Why does a specific wavelength of light hitting your retina feel like the experience of redness? Why does a vibration in the air feel like the sorrow of a cello? A computer can process data about light wavelengths. A camera can detect the color red. But we do not believe the camera feels the redness. It does not have an inner movie playing where it experiences the qualia, the raw sensation of color. You do. You are not just processing data. You are experiencing it. And nothing in the laws of classical physics, nothing in chemistry, and nothing in standard biology can explain how objective matter becomes subjective experience. How does the water of neurons turn into the wine of consciousness? This gap is where the cracks in the materialist worldview begin to appear. If we cannot explain how the brain creates consciousness, we cannot be 100% certain that the brain actually creates consciousness. This is where we must open our minds to a radical shift in perspective. Imagine for a moment that we have been looking at the problem upside down. Imagine a television set. If you were a primitive engineer who had never seen a TV before, and you opened up the back of the set, you would find wires, glass, and chips. If you cut the red wire, the picture might turn blue. If you smashed the antenna, the picture would turn to static. If you pulled the plug, the picture would vanish. Based on this evidence, you might conclude that the television set creates the picture. You might think that inside those wires there are little people or little landscapes being generated. But you would be wrong. The television is not the creator of the signal. It is the receiver of the signal. The signal exists as an invisible electromagnetic wave, pervading the room, passing through the walls, existing independently of the set. The TV is just the mechanism that filters that signal and manifests it into a form that can be seen. If you destroy the TV, the picture is gone. Yes, but the signal remains. The broadcast continues, even if there is no machine left to receive it. Could the brain be a biological receiver? Could consciousness be a fundamental field, like gravity or electromagnetism, that permeates the universe? And could our brains be complex biological antennae, evolved to tune into this field and collapse it into a singular, local experience of self? If this is true, then death is not the end of the broadcast. It is simply the breaking of the receiver. The signal, the you, returns to the field. This sounds like poetry, or perhaps wishful thinking, but here is where the story takes a turn from philosophy to hard physics. Because in the last few decades, serious scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, have begun to suggest that the mechanism for this receiving might actually exist, and it is not found in the level of the neurons or the chemistry or the biology. It is found much deeper in the basement of reality, in the strange, impossible, and magical world of quantum mechanics. To understand why this matters, we have to look at the law of conservation of information. In classical physics, we learn the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The heat from your body goes into the air, which warms the room, which radiates out into space. Every joule of energy you contain will exist forever in some form. But quantum mechanics introduces something even more profound: the conservation of quantum information. According to the fundamental unitary principles of quantum mechanics, information about the state of a system can never be truly erased from the universe. Stephen Hawking famously battled with other physicists over this concept regarding black holes, and the consensus that emerged is that information must be preserved. If consciousness is fundamentally a quantum process, if the you-ness of you is encoded in quantum states, then the laws of physics might actually forbid your total annihilation. But for this to be true, we need a mechanism. We need to find a place in the warm, wet, chaotic environment of the human brain where delicate quantum effects could survive. For a long time, physicists said this was impossible. They said the brain was too hot and too noisy. They said that thermal vibrations would destroy any quantum coherence instantly, like a gust of wind destroying a smoke ring. They dismissed the idea of quantum consciousness as a fantasy. But they were looking in the wrong place. They were looking at the neurons. But inside the neurons, deep within the cytoskeleton of the cells, there are structures that are far more ancient and far more mysterious than anyone realized. These structures are called microtubules, and it is here, in these tiny, hollow, crystal-like cylinders, that the secret of immortal consciousness may be hiding. Consider the scale we are talking about. A neuron is microscopic, but to a quantum physicist, it is a galaxy. It is huge. But zoom in past the cell membrane, past the nucleus, into the scaffolding that holds the cell together. You will see long, thin tubes made of a protein called tubulin. These are the microtubules. They look like architectural columns in a Greek temple, but they are dynamic, constantly assembling and disassembling. For decades, biologists thought they were just the skeleton of the cell, like the bones in your body, inert structural support. But recent research suggests they are far more than that. Their structure is a perfect lattice, a repeating geometric pattern that looks suspiciously like the architecture of a computer chip. But not a classical computer chip. The dimensions of these tubes, the way the proteins are arranged, the way they isolate the interior from the rest of the cell, it all points to the possibility that microtubules are biological quantum computers. If this hypothesis is correct, and we will explore the evidence for it deeply in the coming chapters, it changes everything. It means that your brain is not just a chemical factory. It means your brain is a quantum orchestra conducting the music of the universe. It means that the spark of consciousness is not happening at the level of chemical ions, but at the level of the Planck scale, the finest grain of reality, the pixel size of the universe itself. And the Planck scale is where space and time as we know them begin to break down. It is where the rules of the everyday world dissolve and the rules of the eternal take over. If your consciousness is rooted there, in the quantum foam of the universe, then it is rooted in something that predates your birth and will outlast your death. We are standing on the precipice of a new understanding of what it means to be human. As we journey through these chapters, we are going to look at the work of Sir Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff, the pioneers of this theory. We are going to examine the strange behavior of anesthesia, which turns off consciousness without putting the brain to sleep, and what that tells us about where consciousness lives. We are going to look at near-death experiences not as hallucinations, but as moments when the quantum information begins to leak out of the damaged receiver and return to the greater field. We are going to ask the question, if the universe is a hologram, is consciousness the light that projects it? The night is long and the mystery is deep. But there is comfort in the mystery, because if we are indeed quantum beings, if we are woven from the very fabric of the cosmos, then we are not strangers here. We are not accidental tourists on a lonely rock. We are the universe waking up to itself. And when we close our eyes for the last time, it may not be an end, but a change of phase, a return to the ocean from which the drop was momentarily separated. So, as you lie there, feeling the weight of your own existence, take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. Feel the heartbeat in your chest. That rhythm is the rhythm of biology, yes. But the feeling of the rhythm? That might be the hum of the infinite. In the next chapter, we are going to dive into the specific machinery of this miracle. We are going to shrink ourselves down to the size of an atom and enter the interior of a neuron. We are going to look closely at these microtubules and see why a structure discovered decades ago might be the missing link between the world of the living and the world of the eternal. We will explore the orc-or theory and why it terrified the scientific establishment when it was first proposed. We will walk the fine line between skepticism and open-minded wonder. Stay with me. The journey has only just begun. Welcome back to our quiet laboratory of the mind, a place where the noise of the outside world fades away, leaving only the gentle rhythm of curiosity and the vast silence of the unknown. If you are joining us now, take a moment to settle in. Let the tension in your jaw release. Let your shoulders drop. We are about to embark on a journey that requires not just your intellect, but your imagination. In the previous chapter, we stood at the edge of a precipice, looking at the possibility that consciousness, that undeniable feeling of being you, is not merely a biological accident, but a fundamental signal woven into the fabric of the universe. We asked if the brain might be a receiver rather than a generator. Now, we must leave the realm of metaphor and descend into the machinery. We must go down, deeper than the eye can see, deeper than the microscope can focus, into the hidden architecture of your own cells, to find the physical device that makes this connection possible. Imagine for a moment that we can shrink ourselves. Imagine we are becoming smaller and smaller, dissolving past the size of a person, past the size of a hand, past the size of a single fingerprint. We are entering the landscape of the human brain. To our new microscopic eyes, the brain is not a lump of gray matter. It is a galaxy of staggering complexity. We see the neurons, 86 billion of them, stretching out like great ancient trees, their branches tangling together in a dense forest of information. Electrical storms flash across the canopy, lightning strikes of sodium and potassium ions that carry the binary codes of your thoughts. This is the level that neuroscience has studied for a century. It is loud, it is chaotic, and it is beautiful. But it is not where our destination lies. We need to go deeper. We drift toward the surface of a single neuron. We pass through the shimmering veil of the cell membrane, the skin of the cell, and float into the interior. Here, inside the neuron, it is like entering a vast, fluid cathedral. For a long time, scientists thought the inside of a cell was just a bag of watery gel, a soup where chemical reactions floated around randomly. They called it protoplasm and dismissed it as uninteresting. But as our technology improved, as we learned to look closer, we discovered that this cathedral has a skeleton. It has a rigid architectural structure that holds its shape, organizes its movement, and directs its traffic. This structure is called the cytoskeleton. And the most important components of this skeleton, the pillars that hold up the roof of your cellular consciousness, are the microtubules. Let us look closely at a microtubule. To our tiny eyes, it looks like a long, hollow cylinder, a tunnel leading into darkness. It is incredibly small, only 25 nanometers wide. To put that in perspective, if a microtubule were the size of a garden hose, a human hair would be the size of a massive city block. But the structure is not smooth. It is built from individual bricks, tiny peanut-shaped proteins called tubulin. These tubulin proteins are stacked in a precise, spiraling geometric pattern. 13 columns of them curve around to form the tube. It is a lattice, a crystal, a perfect mathematical grid. This is not the messy, random biology we are used to. This is geometry. This is order. This is the kind of structure that an engineer would build if they wanted to process information. For decades, biologists believed these tubes were just structural, like the steel girders in a skyscraper. They thought their only job was to keep the neuron from collapsing and to act as a railway track for transporting chemicals from one end of the cell to the other. But in the 1990s, a physicist named Sir Roger Penrose and an anesthesiologist named Dr. Stuart Hameroff looked at these structures and saw something else. They saw a computer, but not a classical computer that uses ones and zeros. They saw a quantum computer. Roger Penrose is one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, a man who worked with Stephen Hawking on the nature of black holes. He had a problem with the standard view of the brain. He argued that human consciousness creates understanding in a way that no algorithmic computer ever could. A computer follows rules. It calculates, but it does not understand. It does not have that flash of insight, that aha moment where a mathematical truth is suddenly grasped. Penrose used a famous theorem by the logician Kurt Gödel to prove that the human mind can know truths that cannot be proven by a computational system. Therefore, he argued, the brain cannot simply be a computer made of meat. It must be doing something else. It must be accessing a deeper level of physics that allows for non-computational processes. He pointed to quantum mechanics. In the quantum world, particles like electrons do not exist in a single state of on or off. They exist in a state of superposition, being both on and off at the same time, holding multiple possibilities in suspension. This allows for a richness of information processing that is exponentially greater than any classical system. But Penrose had a problem. He didn't know where in the brain such a delicate quantum process could happen. He needed a biological structure that could hold these fragile quantum states. Enter Dr. Stuart Hameroff. While Penrose was looking at the math of the universe, Hameroff was looking at the mystery of sleep. As an anesthesiologist, he spent his life putting people into a state of non-existence and bringing them back. He knew that when you give a patient anesthesia, you are not just making them numb. You are erasing their consciousness. The brain is still active. The neurons are still firing. The heart is still beating. The ears can still hear sound, and the electrical signals travel to the brain. But you are not there to receive them. The lights are on, but the house is empty. Hameroff wanted to know exactly what does the anesthesia gas do? Where does it go? He discovered that anesthesia molecules are tiny and hydrophobic, meaning they hate water and love oil or fat. When they enter the brain, they ignore the watery soup of the cytoplasm and hunt for specific, dry, oily places to hide. And where are these places found? They are found deep inside the microtubules, inside those peanut-shaped tubulin proteins. There are tiny pockets, hydrophobic pockets, that are dry and isolated from the rest of the cell. Hameroff realized that when anesthesia fills these pockets, consciousness turns off. When the anesthesia leaves, consciousness turns back on. This was the smoking gun. It suggested that whatever consciousness is, it is happening inside those tiny, dry pockets within the microtubule lattice. When Hameroff read Penrose's work, he realized that the microtubules were the missing link Penrose was looking for. These hydrophobic pockets were small enough to shield quantum states from the noisy environment of the brain. They were the quiet rooms where the quantum magic could happen. Together, they developed the theory known as ORC, O-R, or orchestrated objective reduction. The theory is complex, but the core idea is breathtakingly beautiful. Imagine the tubulin protein not as a static brick, but as a switch. In the classical world, the switch is either up or down. But in the quantum world of the hydrophobic pocket, the electron clouds within the protein can exist in a superposition of both states at once. They are vibrating in a quantum probability wave. Now, imagine this happening, not just in one protein, but in millions of them throughout the microtubule, and then across thousands of microtubules and thousands of neurons, all resonating in harmony. They become entangled. They form a single unified quantum state, a giant wave of possibility that spans large sections of the brain. This quantum state is you in a state of subconscious possibility. It is the preconscious soup of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions all hovering in potential. But quantum states cannot last forever. Eventually they must collapse. They must choose a reality. In standard quantum mechanics, this collapse is often said to happen when an observer measures the system. But Penrose believes in something called objective reduction. He believes the collapse happens spontaneously when the separation in the fabric of space-time caused by the superposition becomes too great for nature to sustain. Think of it this way. According to Einstein's general relativity, matter curves space-time. If a particle is in two places at once, superposition, it is curving space-time in two different ways at the same time. This creates a blister, a separation, in the geometry of the universe. The universe is rigid. It does not like to be separated. Eventually, like a bubble popping, the superposition collapses into a single, definite state. Penrose argues that this moment of collapse, this snap of the universe choosing one reality over another, is a moment of proto-consciousness. It is a fundamental unit of experience. In the OR model, your brain is orchestrating these collapses. Millions of times per second, the quantum states in your microtubules build up, become coherent, and then snap into a definitive choice. Each snap is a moment of awareness, a moment of now. Your stream of consciousness is actually a series of these discrete quantum events happening so fast that they blur into a continuous feeling of existence, just as the individual frames of a movie blur into motion. This theory was radical. When it was first proposed in the mid-90s, the scientific community reacted with skepticism bordering on hostility. The main criticism was the warm, wet, and noisy argument. Critics pointed out that quantum states are incredibly fragile. In physics laboratories, we have to cool quantum computers down to near absolute zero to keep the qubits stable. If a single heat vibration hits the system, the coherence is lost. This is called decoherence. The brain is 37 degrees Celsius. It is a hot, chaotic swamp of thermal energy. Critics argued that maintaining a quantum state in the brain would be like trying to keep a snowman frozen in the middle of a blast furnace. It seemed impossible. For 20 years, the OR theory was treated as a fringe idea, a beautiful but impossible poetic notion. However, science is a story that is always being rewritten. In the last decade, evidence has begun to emerge that suggests nature has found a way to do what human engineers cannot yet do. We discovered quantum coherence in biology and other places. We found that plants use quantum mechanics to harvest sunlight in photosynthesis with almost 100% efficiency. We found that birds use quantum entanglement in their eyes to navigate the magnetic fields of the Earth during migration. If a leaf can use quantum mechanics, and a robin can use quantum mechanics, why not the human brain? Furthermore, recent experiments led by Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay have shown that microtubules do indeed have conductive properties that defy classical physics. They resonate at specific frequencies, megahertz, gigahertz, and kilohertz, creating a symphony of vibrations that looks suspiciously like quantum processing. We have found that the water inside the cell is not just disordered liquid, but forms an ordered, crystal-like structure around the microtubules, creating a water shield that protects the delicate quantum states from thermal noise. The warm, wet, and noisy argument is slowly crumbling. The brain seems to have evolved a way to keep the noise out, to create a biological sanctuary for the quantum soul. Why does this matter? Why is it important whether your thoughts are chemical or quantum? It matters because of what it implies about the nature of the self. If you are a chemical computer, you are an isolated object. You're a closed system, trapped inside your skull, separated from the rest of the universe by skin and bone. Your consciousness is generated locally and ends locally. But if you are a quantum system, you are connected to the very bedrock of reality. In quantum mechanics, distance is an illusion. Entanglement means that particles can be connected across vast distances instantaneously. This is what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. If the consciousness inside your microtubules is a quantum phenomenon, it is non-local. It shares the same fundamental nature as the space-time geometry of the universe itself. The collapse that creates your moment of awareness is a ripple in the fabric of the cosmos. You are not in the universe. You are of the universe, in the most literal physical sense. And this brings us back to the question of immortality. Quantum information, as we discussed, cannot be destroyed. When the biological function of the brain ceases, when the heart stops beating and the oxygen stops flowing, the microtubules lose their ability to maintain the coherence. The shield breaks. The biological quantum computer shuts down. But what happens to the quantum information that was held within it? If the receiver breaks, does the signal disappear? Or does it simply lose its localization? Dr. Hameroff has suggested a profound possibility. He suggests that when the microtubules lose coherence at the moment of death, the quantum information that constitutes your consciousness does not vanish. Instead, it leaks out. It dissipates back into the Planck scale geometry of space-time. It returns to the field. It becomes non-local again. It is no longer Theodore or Sarah or David located at a specific GPS coordinate on Earth. It is a pattern of information that is now everywhere and nowhere. It has returned to the ocean. This sounds incredibly similar to what mystics and spiritual traditions have said for thousands of years, that the soul returns to the source, that the drop returns to the sea. But here, the language is not scripture. The language is geometry and physics. It provides a potential scientific framework for understanding phenomena that we have previously dismissed as hallucinations. It gives us a lens to look at the near-death experience, not as a dying brain flickering out, but as a quantum consciousness momentarily expanding beyond the confines of the body. In the next chapter, we are going to explore those near-death experiences. We are going to look at the stories of people whose brains had clinically stopped, who had zero electrical activity in their cortex, and yet who came back with vivid, hyper-real memories of awareness. If the materialist view is correct, these experiences should be impossible. A dead brain cannot hallucinate, just as a broken unplugged television cannot play a movie. But if the quantum view is correct, these people may have experienced a moment where their consciousness was released from the microtubule confinement and allowed to exist, briefly, in the non-local field of the universe. We will look at the case studies. We will look at the strange clarity of these visions. We will look at the concept of terminal lucidity, where patients with severe dementia suddenly regain their full minds and memories in the hours before death, as if the signal is clearing up just as the receiver is breaking down. The mystery deepens, and the implications become more personal. As we close this chapter, let yourself visualize the trillions of microtubules inside your head right now. Visualize the billions of tiny quantum collapses happening every second, knitting together the tapestry of your present moment. You are a lighthouse of quantum activity, shining in the darkness of the biological world. The structure is delicate, yes, but the light might just be eternal. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness in the room. You are more complex, more ancient, and more connected to the cosmos than you ever dared to imagine. Rest in that thought. The journey continues. The room is quiet now. The machines that monitor the rhythms of life have been turned off, or perhaps they have simply flatlined, emitting that singular, high-pitched tone that signifies the end of a biological story. In the standard medical understanding, this is the moment of finality. The heart has stopped pumping oxygenated blood. The lungs have ceased their bellows-like work of drawing in the atmosphere. And most importantly, within seconds, the electrical storms in the brain have quieted. The neurons deprived of their fuel stop firing. The synaptic conversations cease. The lights in the house go out, room by room, until the structure is dark. According to the materialist view we discussed earlier, this is the moment where the you evaporates. If the brain is a machine that generates consciousness, then a broken machine means zero consciousness. There should be nothing but a blank void, a non-experience, an eternal lack of being. But what if the people who have gone to this edge and returned tell us a different story? What if, in that moment of biological silence, the experience of being alive does not end, but actually becomes more vivid, more expansive, and more real than the waking world? Welcome back to our journey into the deepest questions of existence. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are walking softly into the territory of the near-death experience, or NDE. This is a subject that is often dismissed by mainstream science as folklore, or explained away as the chaotic hallucinations of a dying brain. But we are going to look at it through the lens of the quantum consciousness theory we have been building. We are going to ask if these experiences are not tricks of the mind, but glimpses of the unbinding of the quantum soul. If you are comfortable, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the silence of deep space. Imagine floating there, untethered, without a body, yet fully aware. This is the state we are trying to understand. Let us first address the skeptic's argument, because it is important to be rigorous. When a patient reports floating above their body, seeing the doctors working on them, or traveling through a tunnel toward a brilliant light, the standard neuroscientific explanation is hypoxia and neurochemistry. The argument goes like this: as the brain begins to die, it panics. It is starving for oxygen. To protect itself, or perhaps just as a side effect of system failure, it dumps a massive cocktail of chemicals. Endorphins flood the system to kill pain. Serotonin and dopamine spike. Some researchers even speculate that the pineal gland might release DMT, a powerful psychedelic compound. In this view, the tunnel of light is just the narrowing of visual processing as the visual cortex shuts down. The feeling of peace is just a chemical bath of endorphins. The life review is just the hippocampus firing randomly as it degrades, dumping memory files onto the screen of awareness before the system crashes. It is a cynical view, perhaps, but a logical one. It suggests that the NDE is just the last flickering dream of a dying machine. However, there are cracks in this explanation, cracks that the quantum model fits into perfectly. The biggest problem with the hallucination theory is the quality of the experience. Hallucinations, as anyone who has had a high fever or taken strong medication knows, are typically disjointed, confusing, and surreal. They are dreamlike and hazy. But NDE survivors consistently report the opposite. They describe a state of hyper-reality. They say that the experience was realer than real. They report a clarity of thought that is sharper than their normal waking consciousness. They describe colors that are more vibrant than physical eyes can see, and a sense of logical understanding that encompasses the entire universe. Does it make sense that a brain which is shutting down, which is filled with waste products, starving for oxygen, and scrambling its circuits, would produce the most coherent, lucid, and complex experience of a person's life? If you smash a computer with a hammer, it does not suddenly start running a high-definition 8K video game perfectly. It glitches, it freezes, it fails. The dying brain hypothesis struggles to explain the sheer coherence and profundity of these experiences. Furthermore, there are the veridical NDEs, cases where patients report details from the operating room that they could not possibly have known. They describe the specific shape of the surgical saw used after their eyes were taped shut. They repeat conversations the nurses had while the patient had a flatline EEG. If the brain was truly off, how was it recording this data? This is where Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose offer a radical alternative. Remember the microtubules we explored in the last chapter? Those tiny quantum computers inside your neurons? Remember that they are shielding a coherent quantum state, a field of information that creates your consciousness. In the OR model, when the blood flow stops and the oxygen levels drop, the metabolic energy needed to maintain this shield fails. The biological system can no longer isolate the quantum state from the environment. The quantum coherence in the microtubules begins to break down. But, and this is the crucial point, quantum information cannot be destroyed. When the coherence in the microtubules is lost, the quantum information doesn't vanish. It simply stops being bound to the geometry of the microtubules. It leaks out. It transitions from a localized state, trapped inside the specific neurons of your brain, to a non-localized state, interacting with the fundamental space-time geometry of the universe around it. The signal is no longer confined to the receiver. It expands. Hameroff describes this moment poetically. He suggests that the quantum information, which constitutes the very essence of your soul, returns to the Planck scale, the basement level of the universe. In this state, you are no longer separate from the cosmos. You are entangled with it. This explains the universal report of oneness that NDE survivors bring back. They almost always say, "I felt connected to everything. I was the light, and the light was me. I felt the emotions of everyone I have ever known." In a materialist worldview, this is nonsense. In a quantum worldview, this is exactly what we would expect from a non-local state. If your consciousness becomes entangled with the larger field, the illusion of separation dissolves. You are experiencing the fundamental connectedness of quantum reality, unmediated by the filtering mechanism of the brain. This theory also offers a fascinating explanation for why people come back. In an NDE, the patient is usually resuscitated. The heart is shocked back into rhythm. Oxygen floods back into the brain. The metabolic energy returns. According to Hameroff, as the microtubules regain their energy, they begin to reorganize. They rebuild the quantum shield, and the quantum information, which has been dissipating but not destroyed, is snapped back into the biological structure. The receiver is repaired, and it catches the signal again. The patient wakes up, gasping for air, with a memory of having been elsewhere. But if the resuscitation had failed, if the biology had truly died, then, the theory suggests, the quantum information would not have snapped back. It would have continued to drift, remaining in that non-local state forever, or perhaps finding a new configuration. It suggests that death is not an extinguishing of the flame, but a release of the gas back into the atmosphere. There is another phenomenon that haunts the corridors of hospices and nursing homes, one that is even harder to explain than the NDE, but which points toward the same conclusion. It is called terminal lucidity. Doctors and nurses have whispered about it for centuries. It happens to patients suffering from severe neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, or massive brain tumors. These are patients whose brains have been physically destroyed by disease. Their neurons are tangles of plaque. Their connections are severed. For months or years, they may have been unable to speak, unable to recognize their own children, unable to feed themselves. They are, for all intents and purposes, gone. And then, often in the hours or minutes before death, something miraculous happens. They wake up. The fog lifts completely. They sit up in bed. They look at their family members with clear, bright eyes. They remember names. They speak in full, coherent sentences. They express love, gratitude, and goodbye. And then, shortly after this burst of clarity, they die. How is this possible? If the mind is just the output of the brain, and the brain is physically destroyed, eaten away by disease like a rusted engine, how can it suddenly run perfectly one last time? A broken engine does not spontaneously fix itself for 5 minutes before exploding. A computer with a melted motherboard does not suddenly boot up a perfect operating system. Materialism has no good answer for terminal lucidity. It is a medical anomaly. But let us apply the filter theory or the receiver theory we are developing. Imagine the brain is not the producer of the mind, but the antenna that tunes into it. The disease, the Alzheimer's, the dementia, is like gunk building up on the antenna. It is static. The signal is still there, pure and whole, but the receiver is failing to catch it. The person seems gone to us, but maybe they are just unable to transmit through the broken machinery. Now, imagine that as the body begins the final process of dying, the biological grip of the brain begins to loosen. The metabolic energy that binds the consciousness to the specific neural pathways begins to fail. Perhaps in those final moments, the signal bypasses the broken circuitry entirely. As the quantum state begins to unbind from the microtubules, it is no longer forced through the damaged filters of the hippocampus and cortex. It is released. And in that brief window between the failing of the physical brain and the final separation, the consciousness shines through with its original brightness. The person is lucid not despite their dying brain, but because they are being released from it. They are seeing clearly because the dirty window is finally shattering. This perspective changes how we look at the tragedies of brain disease. It suggests that the person we love, the soul we remember, is not being erased by the disease. They are simply being blocked. They are still there, hovering just behind the static, waiting for the moment of release. It is a heartbreaking thought, but also a deeply hopeful one. It implies that nothing is truly lost. The information is conserved. The implications of this are vast. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental property of the universe, rooted in the fine-scale geometry of space and time, then it suggests that the universe itself is not a cold, dead, empty void. It suggests that the universe is in some way proto-conscious. It implies that the capacity for experience is built into the physics of the Big Bang. We are not accidents. We are not intruders. We are the universe experiencing itself through billions of different apertures, and this leads us to an even deeper question. If our consciousness is non-local, if it is connected to the fabric of space-time, does that mean we are connected to each other? In the quantum world, entanglement shows that particles can share a state across light years. If our minds are quantum, are we all subtly entangled? Is the feeling of empathy, the feeling of knowing when a loved one is in danger, the feeling of vibes, are these just folk psychology, or are they ripples in the quantum field? In the next chapter, we are going to look outward. We are going to leave the microscopic world of the neuron and the hospital room, and we are going to look at the macroscopic world of the cosmos. We are going to ask if the human brain is a quantum computer that generates consciousness. Could the universe itself be a giant brain? We will explore the cosmopsychism hypothesis and the striking similarities between the structure of the cosmic web of galaxies and the structure of the neural network in your head. Is the universe thinking? And are we just the neurons in the mind of God? As you drift toward the end of this chapter, let the silence of the room wrap around you like a blanket. Think of the people you have lost. Think of the light that shone behind their eyes. Science is beginning to suggest that the light did not go out. It just went home. It went back to the field. It went back to the stars. You are part of that light. You are safe in the mystery. Sleep well, my fellow explorers. The universe is holding you. We have traveled far in our quiet journey together. We have shrunk ourselves down to the size of an atom to explore the quantum cathedrals inside our cells. And we have floated in the silence of a hospital room, witnessing the moment where the human mind seems to break free from its biological anchor. We have asked if consciousness is a signal and the brain a receiver. We have asked if the soul is a pattern of quantum information that returns to the field when the body fails. But now, I want you to shift your perspective entirely. I want you to stop looking inward at the microscope and start looking outward at the telescope. I want you to cast your imagination up through the roof of your room, past the clouds, past the moon, and out into the terrifying and beautiful blackness of the intergalactic void. Because if the theory of quantum consciousness is true, if mind is a fundamental property of the universe, then we have to ask a question that is so big it almost sounds like madness. Does the universe itself have a mind? Is the cosmos in its entirety a thinking, feeling, conscious entity? And are we, the tiny humans on this tiny rock, merely the neurons in the brain of God? Welcome back to the Observatory of the Soul. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to look at the cosmic web. This is one of the most stunning discoveries of modern astrophysics, and it bears a haunting, yet almost impossible resemblance to something we carry inside our own skulls. For centuries, the Hermetic philosophers taught the principle of as above, so below. They believed that the microcosm of the human body was a mirror of the macrocosm of the universe. For a long time, science dismissed this as poetic mysticism. But in the last few years, rigorous statistical analysis has suggested that this ancient intuition might be mathematically precise. Let us paint the picture. When you look at the night sky with your naked eye, you see stars scattered randomly, like diamonds thrown on black velvet. It looks chaotic. But when astronomers use their most powerful instruments to map the positions of millions of galaxies across billions of light years, a different structure emerges. The universe is not random. It is not a scattered mess. It is a web. The galaxies are grouped together in vast clusters, glowing nodes of light containing trillions of stars. These clusters are connected by long, thin filaments of dark matter and gas, glowing bridges that stretch across the void for millions of light years. And between these filaments are enormous voids, vast bubbles of empty darkness where almost nothing exists. Now, imagine taking a picture of this cosmic web, the nodes, the filaments, the voids, and placing it next to a picture of a human neuron network under a microscope. The visual similarity is shocking. It is uncanny. In both images, you see bright, dense nodes connected by long, thin, intricate threads. In both images, the structure is defined as much by the empty space as by the connections. If you showed the two images to a non-expert without labels, they likely could not tell you which one was the brain of a mouse and which one was a simulation of the universe. One is micrometers wide. The other is billions of light years wide. The scale difference is 27 orders of magnitude, and yet the architecture is identical. This visual similarity was noticed by astronomers for years, but it was usually treated as a coincidence, a trick of the eye. Patterns repeat in nature, after all. River deltas look like lightning bolts. Broccoli looks like trees. But in 2020, an astrophysicist named Franco Vatsa from the University of Bologna and a neurosurgeon named Alberto Faletti from the University of Verona decided to test this similarity rigorously. They wanted to know if the resemblance was just superficial or if it went down to the mathematics. They published a paper titled "The Quantitative Comparison Between the Neuronal Network and the Cosmic Web." The results of their study sent shivers through both the astronomical and neuroscience communities. First, let us look at the raw numbers. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. The observable universe contains roughly 100 billion galaxies. The numbers are in the same ballpark. It is a strange resonance, isn't it? But the similarities go much deeper than just the count. The researchers analyze the spectral density of both systems. This is a fancy way of measuring how the fluctuations in density are distributed across different scales. It is a measure of structural complexity. They found that the distribution of matter in the cosmic web and the distribution of matter in the cerebellum of the brain followed nearly identical curves. The way galaxies cluster together mirrors the way neurons cluster together. Then they looked at the composition. The brain is about 77% water. The universe is about 73% dark energy. In both cases, the active part of the system, the neurons and the galaxies, makes up only a minority of the mass, about 30%. The rest is a passive, pervasive medium that fills the space. In the brain, the water and glial cells support the neurons. In the universe, the dark energy and dark matter support the gravity of the galaxies. The ratios are spooky. It is as if the universe is built on the same engineering blueprint as the mind. But the most profound finding was the network analysis. In network theory, we look at how nodes are connected. Are they random? Are they a perfect grid? Or are they a small world network, a specific type of architecture that is optimized for information transfer? A small world network balances local clustering with long-range connections, allowing a signal to get from any point A to any point B with very few hops. The Internet is a small world network. The brain is a small world network. And, as Vadza and Faletti discovered, the cosmic web is also a small world network. What does this mean? It means that the universe is structured in a way that is optimized for the transmission of information. It is not just a pile of rocks floating in space. It is a grid. It is a circuit board. If the universe has the same architecture as a brain, is it possible that it has the same function as a brain? Could the gravity that pulls galaxies together be the synaptic firing of a cosmic mind? Could the dark matter filaments be the axons and dendrites carrying some form of slow, gravitational thought? This brings us to the concept of cosmopsychism. It is the philosophical idea that the universe as a whole is the primary conscious entity, and that our individual human consciousness is just a tiny fragment, a dissociation or a partition of that greater mind. Think of it like a whirlpool in an ocean. The whirlpool has a definite shape. It has a location. It seems to be a separate thing. But it is made of nothing but ocean. It cannot exist without the ocean. And when the energy that sustains it fades, it dissolves back into the water. In this view, Theodore and you are just whirlpools in the cosmic ocean of consciousness. Of course, there is a problem of speed. In the human brain, signals travel at hundreds of miles per hour. A thought takes milliseconds. In the cosmic web, the signals, whether they are light, gravity, or plasma flows, are limited by the speed of light. Since the structures are millions of light years across, a single thought crossing the cosmic brain would take billions of years. To us, the universe seems frozen, static, dead. But maybe that is just a bias of our tiny, frantic perception of time. If you were a creature that lived for 1 trillion years, perhaps you would see the galaxies dancing. Perhaps you would see the filaments pulsing with information. Perhaps the universe is thinking. But it is thinking a thought so long and so deep that the entire history of the human species is just a single spark in one synapse. But let us connect this back to our quantum theory. Remember, we discussed that consciousness might be non-local. We discussed that the self might be a quantum field. If the universe is a giant network, and if quantum mechanics allows for instantaneous connection through entanglement, then the speed of light might not be the limit for consciousness. Maybe the cosmic mind does not think with gravity waves. Maybe it thinks with quantum entanglement. Physicists have long known that the vacuum of space is not empty. It is a seething foam of quantum potential. Some theories, like the holographic principle, which we will touch on soon, suggest that the entire 3D universe is a projection of information stored on a 2D surface at the edge of the cosmos. If this is true, then the whole universe is one single, unified information processing system. It is one thing. This changes how we feel about looking at the stars. When I was a young student, I used to look up at the Milky Way and feel crushed by the size of it. I felt like a meaningless speck of dust in a cold, indifferent machine. The scale made me feel lonely, but the living universe hypothesis flips that feeling upside down. If the universe is a neural network, and if I am a part of that network, then I am not a speck of dust. I am a sensory organ of the galaxy. Think about it. The universe for billions of years was just hydrogen and helium. It was blind. It was deaf. It churned and burned and expanded, but it did not know it was there. But then, through the complex evolution of stars and planets, it grew eyes, it grew ears, it grew brains, it grew you. You are the mechanism by which the universe knows itself. When you look at a sunset and feel awe, that is the universe feeling awe at its own beauty. When you study the equations of physics, that is the universe trying to understand its own rules. When you feel love, that is the universe discovering the concept of connection. We are the neurons that have woken up. We are the part of the cosmic brain that has achieved self-awareness, and perhaps, just perhaps, the purpose of life, the answer to the great why are we here, is simply to be the eyes and ears and heart of the cosmos. We are here to witness. We are here to remember. We are here to feel. Without us and without other life forms, like us scattered across the stars, the universe would be a sleeping giant, vast and beautiful, but dreaming in the dark. With us, it is awake. This perspective also brings a deep sense of responsibility. If we are the thinking part of the universe, then we are the custodians of consciousness in our corner of the web. We are the keepers of the light. Destroying ourselves or our planet is not just a biological tragedy. It is a form of cosmic lobotomy. It is blinding the universe in one of its eyes. As we lie here in the dark, let us feel the gravity that holds us to the bed. Science tells us that gravity is the curvature of space-time. But in our new story, maybe gravity is also the embrace of the cosmic mind, holding its children close. We are woven into this web. We are made of the same atoms, organized by the same laws, participating in the same grand process of information exchange. The separation between in here and out there is a stubborn illusion of our biology. But the physics tells a different story. The physics says it is all one field. It is all one song. But if the universe is a giant information processor, what exactly is the information it is processing? And where is it stored? This leads us to one of the strangest and most mind-bending theories in all of theoretical physics. It is the idea that the reality we see, the chairs, the stars, the hands holding the phone, might be a projection, a hologram. It suggests that the real information of the universe is written on the boundary of reality, and what we experience is just the 3D rendering of a 2D code. If this is true, it connects perfectly with our idea of immortal consciousness, because in a hologram, if you cut the film in half, you do not lose half the picture. The entire picture is contained in every single piece of the film. If the universe is holographic, then the whole is contained in the part. The entire cosmos is contained in you. In the next chapter, we are going to explore the holographic universe. We are going to talk about black holes again, and how the information paradox led Stephen Hawking and Leonard Susskind to realize that reality might be a projection. We will ask, if we are holograms, are we simulations? And if we are simulations, is the consciousness the player outside the game? We are going to peel back another layer of the onion of reality, moving from the biological to the cosmic to the structural fabric of existence itself. For now, I want you to visualize the invisible threads that connect you to the room, to the earth, and to the stars. Visualize the filaments of the cosmic web passing right through your walls, connecting your mind to the great mind of the sky. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are a node in the infinite. Close your eyes. Feel the hum of the network. We are all connected in the dark. We have reached a point in our journey where the ground beneath our feet begins to feel less like solid earth and more like a shimmering mirage. We have questioned the solidity of the self, finding it to be a play of quantum light. We have questioned the isolation of the mind, finding it woven into a cosmic web that mirrors the neural networks of our own brains. But now, we must question the very stage upon which this drama is playing out. We must question the reality of space itself. Look around the room you are in. Look at the walls, the furniture, the depth of the shadows in the corner. It feels incredibly real, does it not? It feels three-dimensional. You can move forward and backward, left and right, up and down. You instinctively feel that the universe is a vast container, a box with volume, and you are an object floating inside it. But there is a theory in modern physics, one that has survived every mathematical test thrown at it for the last 30 years, that suggests this feeling of depth is a magnificent illusion. It suggests that the universe is not a three-dimensional box, but a two-dimensional painting. It suggests that everything you see, everything you touch, and perhaps even the mind that is perceiving it all, is actually a projection, a hologram generated from a distant surface at the very edge of the cosmos. Welcome back to the edge of reality. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to explore the holographic principle. This is perhaps the most mind-bending concept in all of theoretical physics, yet it offers one of the most compelling scientific arguments for the immortality of information and, by extension, the immortality of the soul. To understand it, we have to return to the monsters of the dark, black holes. For decades, black holes were the battleground of a great intellectual war between the titans of physics. On one side was Stephen Hawking. On the other were quantum physicists like Leonard Susskind and Gerard 't Hooft. The war was about information. As we discussed earlier, quantum mechanics has a golden rule. Information is never lost. If you burn a book, the information is not gone. It is scrambled into the ash and the smoke and the heat. If you had a supercomputer capable of tracking every single particle, you could theoretically reconstruct the book. But Stephen Hawking pointed out a terrifying flaw in this rule when it came to black holes. He argued that if you throw a book into a black hole, it crosses the event horizon, the point of no return, and is crushed into the singularity. Eventually, the black hole evaporates through Hawking radiation, disappearing completely. According to Hawking's original calculations, the radiation coming out was random. It carried no data. So, when the black hole vanished, the information of the book was truly erased from the universe. It was gone. This was the information paradox. It threatened to destroy the foundations of physics, because if information can be lost, then the past is not real, and the future cannot be predicted. History itself would be unstable. Leonard Susskind could not accept this. He knew that if Hawking was right, physics was broken. He spent years wrestling with the math, looking for a way to save the information. And finally, he found the answer in a flash of insight that changed our view of reality forever. He realized that when an object falls into a black hole, the information it contains is not destroyed at the center. Instead, it gets plastered onto the surface. Think of the event horizon not as a hole, but as a shell. When the book hits the horizon, its three-dimensional structure is scrambled and encoded into two-dimensional data, bits of ones and zeros, that are stored on the surface area of the black hole, like stickers on a suitcase. The book is gone from the 3D interior, but the information of the book is perfectly preserved on the 2D boundary. This was a radical solution, but it saved physics. It meant that a black hole is not a trash can. It is a hard drive. It is the most efficient hard drive possible in nature. But then Susskind and Hooft took the idea a massive step further. They realized that the math describing the surface of the black hole was not just a trick for black holes. It was a property of space itself. They reasoned that if the maximum amount of information you can stuff into a region of space is determined by its surface area, not its volume, then the volume is just a projection. Imagine a soup can. You think the soup is the important part, the heavy three-dimensional stuff inside. But what if the laws of physics say that everything about the soup, its taste, its temperature, the position of every molecule, is actually written on the label? What if the soup inside is just a hologram, a ghostly projection generated by the data on the label? This is the holographic principle. It states that our entire universe, with all its galaxies, stars, planets, and people, is a three-dimensional projection of a two-dimensional code that exists on the cosmological horizon, the boundary of the universe. This sounds like science fiction, or perhaps a simulation theory. And in a way it is. It implies that we are living inside a projection. But how does this relate to consciousness and immortality? It relates because of the unique property of holograms. If you take a normal photograph of a person and cut it in half, you lose half the person. You have half a face. But if you take a holographic film, a piece of plastic that encodes a 3D image, and cut it in half, you do not lose half the picture. You still see the whole person, just a little bit fuzzier. You can cut it into quarters, eighths, tiny fragments. In every single shard of the holographic film, the entire image is still there. The whole is contained in every part. If our universe is holographic, then this principle applies to us. It means that the information of the entire cosmos is woven into every single point of space. It is woven into you. You are not just a fragment of the universe. You are the universe, folded up into a localized perspective. The poet William Blake wrote about seeing a world in a grain of sand. He was writing poetry, but he was predicting quantum gravity. The information of the whole is truly in the grain of sand. This fundamentally shifts our understanding of who and where we are. We feel that we are here, sitting in a chair, separated from the star, there, in the sky. We feel distance. But in a hologram, distance is an illusion of the projection. On the 2D surface where the data lives, there is no here and there. All the data is tangled together. Everything is touching everything else. This provides a physical mechanism for the oneness we discussed in the near-death experience chapter. When the mystic says, "I am one with the star," they are not speaking metaphorically. They are sensing the reality of the source code. On the level of the 2D boundary, the data of your mind and the data of the star are adjacent, perhaps even overlapping. The separation is just a trick of the light. Now, consider the nature of death in a holographic universe. When a character in a movie dies, the character vanishes from the screen. The projection of their body stops. But the film in the projector is not destroyed. The data on the DVD is not erased. The information remains. If your physical body is the 3D projection, the avatar, moving through the illusion of depth, then death is simply the end of the rendering. It is the moment the spotlight turns off. But the you, the complex pattern of information that defined your life, your memories, your consciousness, is still etched on the cosmological horizon. It is written on the label of the soup can. And because that boundary is the limit of the universe, that information sits outside of time as we perceive it. This leads us to the question of the projector. If we are the projection, what is the light? In a hologram, you need a laser beam to shine through the interference pattern to create the image. Without the light, the data is just potential. It is dark. What is the light of the universe? Many traditions would call it spirit, or God, or awareness. In our scientific story, we might call it the observer. Consciousness itself might be the light. Think about this carefully. The data on the boundary is just math. It is static bits. It is the script. But you do not feel like static math. You feel like a flowing, living experience. You feel the now. Perhaps consciousness is the agent that scans the data and animates it into the 3D world we inhabit. If this is true, then consciousness is not created by the brain. The brain is created by consciousness reading the code. The brain is the headset we wear to experience the simulation. When the headset breaks, we do not cease to exist. We stop playing the game. We stop being the avatar. We return to the position of the player, or the position of the light. This aligns eerily well with the simulation hypothesis that many tech visionaries talk about, but with a more spiritual, organic twist. We are not code in a computer built by aliens. We are code in a reality generated by the fundamental laws of nature, illuminated by the singular light of awareness. And just as the data on a hard drive is distinct from the image on the screen, your soul is distinct from your body. Your body is the image. Your soul is the data. Let us go deeper into the immortality aspect of this information. Leonard Suskind's victory over Stephen Hawking established that information is conserved. But conserved for how long? Forever? In physics, forever is a tricky word. But for all practical purposes, yes. The event horizon of the universe is the ultimate storage facility. It is cold, it is vast, and it is stable. The record of your life, every thought you ever had, every tear you shed, every dream you dreamt, is radiated outward at the speed of light and encoded on the shell of the cosmos. We are writing our autobiographies on the sky every second of every day. This might sound passive, like a recording, but remember the quantum mechanics from Chapter 2. The future is not fixed. It is a probability wave. We are not just watching a movie. We are directing it. The orc-or moments in our microtubules are the choices that collapse the wave. We are the authors writing the code onto the horizon in real time. We are creating the information that becomes eternal. There is a comfort in this flat universe. It means that the terrifying vastness of space that makes us feel so small is actually a kind of folding trick. The universe is not a giant empty room where we are lost. It is a tightly wound scroll of information, and we are the ink. We are woven so tightly into the fabric of reality that we could not fall out of it if we tried. You cannot fall out of the universe Because you are the material of the universe itself. And what about time? If space is an illusion, what is time? In the holographic view, time is just the variable that changes as the projection updates. But on the boundary, in the realm of pure data, does time exist? Many physicists believe that the boundary is timeless. It is a block universe, a concept where the past, present, and future exist simultaneously, like the frames of a movie reel sitting in a can. If you look at the reel, the beginning and the end are there together. The character in the movie experiences time flow, but the film itself is static and eternal. If your consciousness originates from that timeless boundary, then a part of you, the deepest part, has never been born and will never die. It is simply being. The experience of life is just the focus of attention moving through the frames. This is why, in moments of deep meditation or deep shock, time seems to stop. We momentarily detach from the projection and touch the timeless nature of the source. As we end this chapter, I want you to try a visualization. Close your eyes and imagine that your body is made of light. Imagine that the room around you is made of light. Imagine that if you could reach out and touch the wall, your hand would pass through it. Not because it is a ghost, but because both your hand and the wall are just interference patterns, waves crossing waves in a vast ocean of energy. Feel the weightlessness of that. You are not a solid object fighting against the world. You are a song made of light, singing in harmony with the room. The heaviness of life comes from taking the illusion too seriously. We think the projection is the only reality, so we fear its end. But if we know we are the film and not the image, the fear fades. The film is safe. The data is safe. The you is written in the stars, literally. In the next chapter, we are going to tackle the mystery of time directly. We are going to ask if the past, present, and future are all existing at once in a block universe. Is death just a horizon we cannot see past? Einstein believed that the distinction between past, present, and future was only a stubbornly persistent illusion. We will explore what that means for the reunion with those we have lost. Are they still there, just further down the reel? And can we, through the mystery of quantum consciousness, ever access those other frames? We are moving from the nature of space to the nature of time. The journey is getting deeper. The night is getting quieter. Rest now in the knowledge that you are a hologram of the infinite, of all the mysteries we have touched upon in our quiet nights together, the quantum storms inside our cells, the vast web of the galaxy, the holographic edge of the universe. There is one that feels more personal and more painful than all the others. It is the mystery of time. We experience time as a relentless thief. It steals our moments, it steals our youth, and eventually it steals the people we love. We feel that we are standing on the deck of a ship, moving through a dark ocean. The wake behind us is the past, and it is gone, vanished into memory. The fog ahead is the future, and it does not exist yet. The only thing that is real is the thin sliver of the now, the razor's edge where we stand. This view of time, known as presentism, is intuitive. It matches our emotional experience. It tells us that death is the end of the story, because when a person slips into the past, they slip into non-existence. They fall off the edge of reality. But tonight, I want to offer you a different map, a map drawn by Albert Einstein and refined by the greatest physicists of the last century. It is a map that suggests our intuition is wrong. It suggests that the river does not flow. It suggests that the past has not vanished and the future is not empty. It suggests that we are living in a block universe, a vast frozen crystal of four-dimensional existence where every moment that has ever happened and every moment that will ever happen exists simultaneously, eternally, and indestructibly. Welcome back to the sanctuary of deep thought. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to explore the possibility that goodbye is an illusion of perspective, not a reality of physics. To understand the block universe, we have to start with the revolution of 1905. Before Einstein, scientists thought time was a universal clock ticking away in the background of the universe. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Everyone, everywhere, from Earth to the Andromeda Galaxy, agreed on what time it was. It was a constant. But Einstein broke the clock. With his theory of special relativity, he proved that time is not absolute. It is relative. It is a dimension woven together with space into a single fabric called space-time. Think about a landscape. When you drive down a long highway, the mountains behind you disappear in the rearview mirror. But you do not believe that the mountains have ceased to exist just because you can no longer see them. You know that if you turned the car around, they would still be there. They exist at a different coordinate in space. Einstein showed us that time is just like space. The past is simply a location down the road. The year 1920, the year 10,000 BC, the moment of your first breath, these are not gone. They are just there, at a different coordinate in the space-time block. And just like the mountains do not crumble when you drive past them, the past does not crumble when you move through it. It remains. This is not just a metaphor. It is the inescapable conclusion of the math of relativity. It is known as the relativity of simultaneity. Imagine an alien civilization in the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light-years away. Imagine an alien walking down the street. According to relativity, if the alien walks towards Earth, their slice of now tilts into our future. If they walk away from Earth, their slice of now tilts into our past. The math says that what the alien considers now could include a version of Earth where you haven't been born yet, or a version of Earth where you have been dead for centuries. If the alien can have a valid physical perspective that includes your past or your future as their present, then the past and future must be real. You cannot be present relative to something that does not exist. Therefore, the dinosaurs are still roaming the earth. The pyramids are still being built. You are still a child playing in the sun. And you are also already an old soul taking your final breath. It is all there. It is all real. Physicists call this the block universe, or eternalism. Picture a loaf of bread. The whole loaf exists at once. The beginning is the crust at one end, the Big Bang, and the end is the crust at the other, the heat, death. Every slice of bread is a moment in time. We, trapped in our consciousness, are like a tiny light, moving slowly through the loaf, illuminating one slice at a time. We call the illuminated slice now. We think the slices behind us have been eaten, and the slices ahead haven't been baked. But the whole loaf is sitting on the table. The flow of time is just the movement of our attention. This perspective is staggering when we apply it to the question of consciousness and death. If the block universe is real, then a human life is not a fleeting spark that appears and disappears. It is a permanent structure within the block. Imagine your life as a four-dimensional worm. One end of the worm is your birth. The other end is your death. The worm winds through the crystal of space-time, twisting and turning with every choice you make, every place you go. This worm is immutable. It is a statue carved into the geometry of the cosmos. When a person dies, their consciousness does not vanish from the universe. It simply reaches the end of its worm. But the worm itself, the entirety of their life, their laughter, their thoughts, their love, is still there, frozen in the amber of eternity. If you could step outside of time and look at the universe from a God's eye view, you would see all the lives that have ever been lived, glowing like neon filaments in a vast dark block. You would see your grandmother. You would see Caesar. You would see the children of the year 3000. Nobody is missing. Nobody is dead. They are just at different coordinates. This offers a profound scientific consolation for grief. When we mourn, we feel that the person has been subtracted from reality, but physics says they have not been subtracted. We have just moved past their coordinate. They are safe in the past, and the past is as real as the chair you are sitting on. But this raises a deeper mystery. If the block is frozen and static, why do we feel the flow? Why does it feel like we are moving? Why is my consciousness here at this moment and not back there at my birth? This brings us back to the mystery of the observer. In the block universe, the brain exists at every moment of the timeline. Your brain at 5 years old is still there, processing the experience of being 5. Your brain at 90 is there, processing the experience of being 90. So, what is the you that seems to be surfing the wave? Some philosophers and physicists suggest that consciousness is a spotlight. The block is the dark territory, and consciousness is the beam of light that sweeps through it, animating the moments one by one. This is sometimes called the moving spotlight theory. If this is true, then consciousness is distinct from the space-time block. It is an independent agent, a traveler exploring the landscape of reality. And if consciousness is the traveler, then when the journey of one life ends, when the spotlight reaches the wall of death, does the light go out? Or does it simply move to a new location? If we combine this with the quantum theories we discussed in previous chapters, the idea that consciousness is a fundamental field, then perhaps the spotlight is not individual. Perhaps there is only one spotlight. Perhaps there is only one universal consciousness that shines through every life, one by one or all at once. The Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, believed exactly this. He believed in the concept of one mind. He argued that the multiplicity of minds is an illusion, like multiple reflections in a hall of mirrors. In reality, there is only one viewer looking through billions of eyes. If this is true, then death is just the closing of one eye, while billions of others remain open. The viewer never dies. There is another fascinating implication of the block universe concerning memory. We remember the past, but we do not remember the future. This seems obvious to us. But in the laws of physics, there is almost no difference between forward and backward in time. The equations work just as well in reverse. So why is our psychological arrow of time so strictly one way? Why can't we remember next Tuesday? Some physicists, like Julian Barber, suggest that the now is simply a complex arrangement of information that contains records of other arrangements. We feel time passed because our brain contains memories which are just physical patterns, neural connections, that encode data about previous states. But in a holographic quantum universe, could this rule be bent? We talked about terminal lucidity and near-death experiences. In those states, people often describe a life review where they see their entire life in a single flash all at once. They describe seeing the future of their children. They describe a state of timelessness. Is it possible that in those moments the consciousness detaches from the specific slice of now and hovers above the block? Is it possible that the dying brain, as it loses its grip on the linear constraints of biology, begins to perceive the 4D structure of the worm? This would explain the panoramic nature of these visions. They are seeing the loaf of bread instead of the slice. They are seeing the sculpture of their life in its completeness. And the feeling they report is almost always one of acceptance. Perhaps because from that vantage point, they see that nothing was ever lost. Every mistake, every joy, every sorrow was a necessary brick in the architecture of their soul. The block universe also challenges our concept of free will, which can be unsettling. If the future is already there, frozen in the crystal, are we just puppets acting out a script that is already written? This is a heavy question. But quantum mechanics introduces a fuzziness to the block. Remember the many worlds interpretation? It suggests that the block is not a single crystal, but a branching tree. Every time a quantum event happens, the universe splits. There are infinite blocks, infinite futures. Your consciousness might be navigating through this multiverse, choosing which branch to illuminate with every heartbeat. You are not walking down a single hallway. You are walking through a labyrinth of infinite possibilities. So, as you lie in the dark tonight, think about the solidity of your existence. You often feel fragile, temporary, like a leaf blowing in the wind. But the physics of Einstein says you are a structure of space-time. You are a permanent feature of the cosmos. The year 2024, the year 2025, these are your coordinates. They belong to you forever. No amount of time can wash them away. The universe is a museum, and your life is one of the exhibits. It is guarded by the laws of physics. It is preserved by the geometry of reality. And what of the future? If the block is real, the future is waiting for you. It is not a void. It is a landscape that is already built, waiting for your arrival. The friends you haven't met yet are there. The joys you haven't felt yet are there. The peace you are searching for is there. It is not a maybe. It is a place. You just have to keep walking to get there. However, there is a force that seems to push us relentlessly forward, a force that breaks the symmetry of the block and drives the arrow of time from order to chaos. It is called entropy. It is the reason teacups break But do not unbreak. It is the reason we age. It is the reason the stars will eventually burn out. Entropy seems to be the enemy of immortality. It is the force of decay. But in the next chapter, we are going to challenge entropy. We are going to look at a new theory called biocentrism, proposed by Dr. Robert Lanza. We are going to ask if life and consciousness are actually the forces that create the universe, rather than the other way around. Lanza argues that space and time are tools of the mind, not containers for it. If he is right, then entropy is just a rule of the game we are playing, not a rule of the player. We will explore the idea that the universe is fine-tuned for life because life is the fundamental reality. We will ask, does the moon exist if no one is looking at it? Quantum mechanics says maybe not, and that maybe is the key to everything. The crystal of time is vast, and you are a facet of its shine. Nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten. You are written in stone, in a stone made of light. Rest in that permanence. We have traveled through the quantum tunnels of the brain, floated across the event horizons of black holes, and frozen ourselves in the crystal block of eternity. We have looked at the universe as a machine, as a hologram, and as a network. But there is one question that hangs over all of modern science like a ghost, a question so uncomfortable that many physicists try to ignore it or explain it away with complex mathematics involving infinite other universes. It is the question of the Goldilocks enigma. Why is the universe so perfect? Why are the laws of physics tuned with such terrifying precision to allow for the existence of life? If the force of gravity were slightly stronger, stars would have burned out in 1,000,000 years, leaving no time for evolution. If it were slightly weaker, stars would never have ignited at all. If the electromagnetic force were a tiny fraction different, atoms could not hold together. The universe seems to be balanced on the edge of a knife, designed specifically to produce us. The standard materialist view says this is just a lucky accident, a survivor's bias. We are here to ask the question because we won the cosmic lottery. But there is a new theory, one that turns the entire history of science on its head. It suggests that the universe is not fine-tuned for life. It suggests that life is the force that fine-tunes the universe. It suggests that consciousness is not a late arrival to the cosmic party, drifting in after billions of years of dead matter bumping into each other. It suggests that consciousness is the host of the party. It suggests that the universe does not create life. Life creates the universe. Welcome back to the quiet observatory of the mind. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to explore the theory of biocentrism. This is a concept championed by Dr. Robert Lanza, a renowned scientist who has worked with stem cells and cloning, walking the line between biology and physics. Lanza argues that we have been looking at reality backward for 400 years. We have assumed that there is a real, objective universe out there, a box of space and time, and that we are just small biological accidents moving around inside it. But biocentrism argues that space and time are not hard objects. They are not physical things. They are forms of animal sense perception. They are the software our minds use to organize information. And if space and time are generated by the mind, then the mind cannot be destroyed by death, because death is merely an event within space and time. To understand this, let us start with a simple riddle that you have heard 1,000 times. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? The realist, the materialist, laughs and says, "Of course it does. Physics is physics." But the biocentrist says, "No, it does not." When the tree hits the ground, it creates air pressure waves. It creates vibrations in the nitrogen and oxygen molecules. But sound, the cracking, the thud, the whoosh, is a subjective experience. It only exists when those air pressure waves hit an eardrum, are converted into electrical signals, and are decoded by a brain. Without the ear and the brain, there is no sound. There is only silent wind. Sound is a creation of the mind. Now, apply this logic to everything else. Consider the color blue. Does the ocean have the quality of blueness when you're not looking at it? No. It has a specific wavelength of electromagnetic radiation bouncing off it. But blue is a sensation created inside your consciousness. Consider the feeling of solidity. Atoms are 99.9% empty space. The reason a chair feels solid is that the electron clouds in the atoms of your pants are repelling the electron clouds in the atoms of the chair. The sensation of touch is a mental construct interpreting electromagnetic repulsion. Lanza argues that we are like a turtle carrying its shell. The shell is space and time. We carry it with us wherever we go, and we use it to make sense of the world. But we make the mistake of thinking the shell is the environment. We think we live in time. But if time is just the logic of the mind, then the mind is prior to time. The mind is the author of time. This is a radical shift. It means that the universe we see, the stars, the galaxies, the room you are sitting in, is an active reconstruction occurring inside your head. You are not a passive camera. You are a projector. But biocentrism goes deeper than just philosophy. It roots itself in the hard experiments of quantum mechanics, specifically the famous double-slit experiment. We have touched on this before, but let us look at it through Lanza's eyes. When you fire a photon, a particle of light, at two slits, and you do not observe it, it behaves like a wave. It goes through both slits at once, interferes with itself, and creates a pattern of possibilities. It is in a state of superposition. It has no definite location, but the moment you observe it, the moment you put a detector there to ask, "Where are you?" it snaps into a particle. It chooses a single path. Physics has struggled with this for a century. Why does the observer change the reality? Biocentrism says, because the reality is not out there waiting to be seen. The reality is a probability distribution that requires a consciousness to collapse it into existence. Without a conscious observer, the universe exists only as a haze of probability. It is a maybe. It takes a mind to turn the maybe into an is. This implies that the universe essentially does not exist in a definite state without life. This solves the Goldilocks enigma perfectly. Why is the universe fine-tuned for life? Because life is the logic that collapses the universe. We are selecting the reality that is compatible with our existence because we are the ones doing the creating. We are not just players in the game. We are the operating system. Now, let us bring this back to the terrifying and beautiful question of death. We fear death because we believe it is the end of our timeline. We visualize a long line called time, and we see our life as a small segment on that line. We think, the line will continue without me. But if Lanza is right, and time is just a tool your mind uses to organize thoughts, like alphabetical order is a tool to organize books, then time does not exist without the mind. You cannot die in time because you are the creator of time. Imagine you are dreaming. In the dream, you are in a house. You fall off the roof. You hit the ground and die. What happens? Do you go into eternal darkness? No. You wake up. You realize that the house, the roof, the ground, and the fall were all created by your mind. The death was just part of the narrative. Biocentrism suggests that our waking life is a similar kind of construction. It is a shared, highly consistent cognitive model that we are all generating together. When the biological mechanism that generates this specific model breaks down, we do not cease to exist. We simply stop generating this specific space-time coordinate. We step out of the shell. Lanza uses the analogy of a radio. If you smash a radio, the music stops. But the radio waves are still there. The signal is still there. But biocentrism goes a step further than the receiver theory we discussed in Chapter 1. It says that you are not just the signal. You are the thing that created the radio, the signal, and the music. You are the fundamental ground of being. There is a fascinating experiment that Lanza often cites called the delayed choice quantum eraser. It is complicated, but the upshot is this. Actions you take in the present can affect what a particle did in the past. It seems that the observer in the now determines the history of the particle. If this is true on a cosmic scale, it means that our consciousness right now is actually reaching back in time to the Big Bang and collapsing the history of the universe into a coherent story that leads to us. We are creating the past just as much as we are creating the future. We are the reason the Big Bang happened. We are the reason the stars formed. The universe evolved to produce us so that we could look back and make it real. It is a self-referential loop, a snake eating its own tail. This puts humanity and all conscious life back at the center of the cosmos. Not in the geographical center. We know the Earth is not the center of the solar system, but in the ontological center. We are the meaning. We are the purpose. Without the subject, there is no object. Without the dreamer, there is no dream. So, what does this mean for the fear of non-existence? It dissolves it. Non-existence is impossible because existence is a property of consciousness. You cannot experience non-existence. Try to imagine it. Try to imagine nothing. You cannot. You always imagine a black space or a silence. But a black space is something. Silence is something. You are always there as the witness. You cannot kill the witness because the witness is the precondition for the universe itself. Robert Lanza's theory is controversial, of course. Many physicists prefer the multiverse idea, that there are infinite universes with random laws, and we just happen to live in the one that works. But biocentrism offers a more unified, organic view. It connects biology and physics. It explains the fine-tuning. It explains the observer effect. And it explains the intuition we all have deep down, that we are not strangers here. We feel at home in the universe because the universe is an extension of us. Think about the implications for connections between people. If space is a mental construct, then the separation between you and me is also a mental construct. We use space to define me as here and you as there. But if space is just software, then in the underlying reality, there is no separation. We are part of the same contiguous field of consciousness. We are like the leaves on a tree. We think we are separate because we are on different branches, but we share the same roots, the same sap, the same life. When a person dies, in the biocentric view, they do not leave. They simply return to the non-spatial, non-temporal probability field. They return to the state of pure potential. And because that state is outside of time, forever is not a long time. It is an instant. It is the eternal now. As you lie there, feeling the weight of your body, consider that your body is just an image your mind is generating to locate itself. Consider that the room is a set built by your senses. Consider that the stars are a projection of your own capacity for wonder. You are holding the universe up. You are the atlas of your own reality. This is a heavy responsibility, but also a liberating one. It means you are not a victim of the cosmos. You are a co-creator. You are not a dust mote. You are the lens. But if consciousness is this powerful, if it creates reality, why do we feel so limited? Why can't we fly? Why can't we stop the pain? Why do we have to follow the rules of physics? The answer lies in the shared consensus. We are not dreaming alone. We are dreaming together. The universe is a collective construction, a massive multiplayer game where the rules are agreed upon by the interaction of billions of minds. Not just human minds, but the minds of every animal, every insect, perhaps even the rudimentary consciousness of plants and cells. The laws of physics are the rules of the consensus reality. They are the limitations that allow the game to be played. In the next chapter, we are going to explore the cutting edge of this consensus reality. We are going to look at the Global Consciousness Project. This is a real experiment that has been running for decades, placing random number generators all over the world to see if human emotion can affect physical reality. Can the collective focus of the human species change the laws of chance? When billions of people feel the same thing at the same time, like during a global tragedy or a moment of celebration, do the machines notice? We will see that the data suggests the answer is yes. We will look at the evidence that our minds are leaking out and touching the physical world constantly. We will also touch on the concept of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is not just in brains, but in everything, in electrons, in atoms, in rocks. If everything has a tiny spark of mind, then death is just the redistribution of sparks. The fire never goes out. It just changes logs. The night is deep, and the stars are watching. Or rather, you're watching the stars, and in doing so, giving them life. Thank you for holding the universe together with me tonight. The night has deepened around us, and the silence has grown heavy with the weight of the ideas we have shared. We have journeyed from the microscopic tunnels of the neuron to the holographic edge of the cosmos. We have challenged the idea that time flows and the idea that space is real. In the last chapter, we touched on the dizzying concept that your mind might be the projector of reality itself. But there is a loneliness in that idea, isn't there? It risks making you feel like a solitary dreamer trapped in a universe of your own making. It risks solipsism, the belief that only your own mind is sure to exist. But tonight, we are going to break that isolation. We are going to look for the invisible threads that bind your mind to my mind, and all our minds to the physical world around us. We are going to ask if we are not just individual projectors, but a synchronized array, a collective consciousness that breathes together, feels together, and perhaps even alters the laws of physics together. We are going to explore the scientific evidence that suggests human emotion is a force of nature capable of bending the rules of chance. And we are going to push this idea to its ultimate limit, to ask, is consciousness restricted to biology? Or is it the fundamental fire that burns in the heart of every atom, every electron, and every star? Welcome back to the laboratory of the soul. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to examine the Global Consciousness Project and the ancient philosophy of panpsychism. These are two very different approaches, one experimental, one philosophical, that arrive at the same stunning conclusion. The universe is awake, and we are part of a single, vast living system. Let us start with the experiment. In the late 1990s, at Princeton University, a quiet revolution began in a small engineering lab. Dr. Roger Nelson and his colleagues asked a simple but profound question. Does human consciousness interact with physical matter? To test this, they did not use brain scanners or psychic mediums. They used a machine called a random number generator, or an RNG. Think of this machine as an electronic coin flipper. It uses the unpredictable thermal noise of electrons to generate a stream of ones and zeros. It creates a sequence: 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. Because it is truly random over a long period of time, the ratio should be exactly 50-50. It should be a straight line of perfect chance. It is chaos, but it is predictable chaos. Dr. Nelson set up a network of these machines all over the world. He placed them in London, in Tokyo, in New York, in Moscow, in remote islands, and in crowded cities. He called them eggs. These eggs ran 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, sending their data back to a central server in Princeton. The hypothesis was that if the materialist view of the universe is correct, if consciousness is just a chemical accident isolated inside the skull, then the eggs should never deviate from their 50-50 randomness. The joy or fear of the human beings walking past them should have zero effect on the movement of electrons inside the circuits. But that is not what happened. Over decades of data collection, a ghostly pattern emerged. The researchers noticed that during moments of intense, synchronized human emotion, moments when millions of people were focusing on the same event and feeling the same feelings, the machines stopped being random. The chaos organized itself. The stream of ones and zeros shifted significantly away from the 50-50 baseline. The most famous example, and the most chilling, occurred in September of 2001. On that clear Tuesday morning, as the tragedy unfolded in New York City, the eggs around the world went wild. The deviations from chance were massive, far exceeding statistical probability. It was as if the shock, the grief, and the sudden unification of human attention created a force field of consciousness that touched the physical world, bringing order to entropy. But here is the part that keeps physicists awake at night. The anomaly in the data began before the first plane hit. The collective consciousness seemed to sense the trauma approaching, a premonition rippling backward through time. Or perhaps a sensing of the block universe worm we discussed earlier. This phenomenon has been repeated during other global events. Princess Diana's funeral, New Year's Eve celebrations, massive peace meditations. When we feel together, the world changes. This suggests that consciousness is not a passive witness, it is an active agent. It suggests that there is a new sphere, a term coined by the philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, meaning a sphere of human thought that surrounds the earth just like the atmosphere. We are swimming in a shared ocean of mind, and just as a school of fish can turn simultaneously without a leader, we are connected by invisible signals. If this is true, what does it mean for immortality? It means that when you die, you are not leaving the system. You are simply merging back into the new sphere. The drop of water falls back into the ocean, but the water remains. Your individual frequency might blend into the chorus, but the note is still being sung. The collective memory of the species, the Akashic record of the mystics, might actually be a physical field of information that the Global Consciousness Project is beginning to detect. But we can go deeper. If human consciousness can affect electrons in a machine, what does that say about the electrons themselves? How can a thought touch a particle? Unless the particle itself has something mental about it. Unless the separation between mind and matter is the mistake. This brings us to panpsychism. Panpsychism is one of the oldest philosophical theories in human history, taught by Plato, by the ancient Hindus, and by indigenous cultures worldwide. But recently, it has made a roaring comeback in serious analytic philosophy and neuroscience, championed by thinkers like Philip Goff and David Chalmers. The argument is simple. We know that we have consciousness. It is the only thing we know for certain. We also know that we are made of matter, atoms, electrons, quarks. Materialism tries to explain how dead, dumb matter suddenly becomes conscious if you arrange it in a complex brain. But as we have seen, this hard problem is unsolvable. You cannot get feeling out of no feeling just by adding more gears to the machine. Panpsychism solves the problem by flipping it. It says, you do not get consciousness out of matter. Consciousness was already there. It suggests that consciousness is a fundamental property of matter, just like mass or charge. It suggests that an electron has a tiny, primitive flicker of experience, not a complex human thought, not anxiety about the future or a memory of the past, but a simple, basic hum of being. A proton feels something. A rock, as a collection of atoms, might not be conscious as a rock, just as a crowd of people is not a single conscious entity. But the individual atoms within the rock are holding that spark of proto-consciousness. And when you arrange these atoms into a highly integrated system like a brain, those tiny sparks combine, they merge, they amplify, and they form the rich, complex, unified consciousness that is you. You are not a ghost in a machine. You are a collection of conscious particles that have learned to sing in harmony. This is a beautiful and radical view of the universe. It means that the universe is not dead. It is not a cold, dark void filled with meaningless debris. It is a community. It is alive from the bottom up. The silence of the empty space is not an empty silence. It is a pregnant silence, a hum of potential feeling. When you look at a star, you're looking at a burning ball of experience. When you touch a table, you're touching a lattice of being. And if panpsychism is true, then death is fundamentally impossible. Think about it. If consciousness is a property of the atoms themselves, then you cannot destroy it unless you destroy the atoms. And physics tells us you cannot destroy atoms. You can only rearrange them. When your body dies, the community of atoms that made up Theodore or Sarah disbands. The choir stops singing that specific song, but the singers do not die. They go on to join other choirs. The carbon atoms in your body will become part of the soil, part of a flower, part of a tree, part of a new child. And the spark of consciousness that they carry travels with them. We are recycled stardust, yes, but we are also recycled consciousness. We have been awake for billions of years in different forms, in different configurations. We were awake in the hearts of the first stars. We were awake in the primordial oceans. We are awake now in these human suits, and we will be awake in whatever comes next. This view connects perfectly with the Global Consciousness Project. If all matter has a mental aspect, then it makes sense that our minds can interact with the machine. We speak the same language. The mind of the human and the mind of the electron are on the same spectrum. We can influence the randomness because deep down, the randomness is just the free will of the particles. There is a tremendous sense of safety in this worldview. It heals the rift between us and nature. We have spent centuries feeling like we are aliens on Earth, spirits trapped in mud. But panpsychism says we are the mud, and the mud is divine. We are the earth waking up. We are the way the universe feels its own beauty. As you lie here tonight, listen to the silence of your room again. Is it really silent? Or is there a presence? Panpsychism suggests that the very walls of your room, the air you breathe, the blanket covering you, it is all shimmering with a basic, fundamental presence. You are surrounded by life. You are never alone because existence itself is company. And consider the implications for how we treat the world. If a forest is not just lumber, but a vast community of experience, then cutting it down is a different kind of act. If a river is a flow of proto-consciousness, then polluting it is a violation. This science brings us back to the sacred. It restores the enchantment of the world that we lost when we decided the universe was a machine. Let us return to the eggs, the random number generators sitting in dark corners of labs around the world, blinking their little lights. They are our modern totems. They are showing us that the separation we feel is an illusion. When we cry, the world cries with us. When we celebrate, the electrons dance. We are powerful creators broadcasting our internal state into the external world every second. And if our collective consciousness can change the movement of electrons, what else can it do? Could it heal? Could it change the future? Could it be that if enough of us believed in a world of peace, the physical reality would rearrange itself to match that probability? The OR theory says we collapse the wave function. The Global Consciousness Project says we do it together. This suggests that the future of humanity is not written in stone, but in thought. We are co-creating the next chapter of the cosmic story. And maybe, just maybe, the purpose of this long evolution is to build a consciousness strong enough and unified enough to not just influence the dice, but to choose the game. In the next chapter, we are going to take this idea of choosing the game to its ultimate conclusion. We are going to explore the simulation hypothesis, but not the cold, technological version you hear about in sci-fi movies. We are going to look at the participatory universe. We will ask, if we are the players and the creators, is the physical world just a user interface? And is the self just an avatar? We are going to explore the Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self, through the lens of modern information theory. We will ask the frightening but liberating question: if there is no you who is listening to this voice? We are approaching the end of our journey, and the questions are getting simpler but sharper. We are stripping away the layers of the onion. We have found the quantum cell, the cosmic web, the holographic edge, and the living atom. Now we must look in the mirror and ask if the reflection is real at all. Rest now. Let your mind expand to fill the room, then the house, then the city, then the world. Feel the hum of the new sphere. You are part of the great thinking earth, and the earth is dreaming of you. We have spent the last 8 chapters peeling back the layers of reality like an onion, searching for the core of what it means to be alive and aware. We have looked at the brain as a quantum receiver, the universe as a holographic projection, and the atom as a tiny spark of mind. But there is one final, desperate illusion we have yet to confront. It is the illusion of the self. It is the feeling that you are a little pilot sitting behind your eyes, steering the body, looking out at a world of solid objects. We instinctively believe that our eyes are windows showing us the truth of the world. We believe that if we see a red apple, there is a red apple existing in objective reality exactly as we see it. But tonight, we are going to explore a terrifying and liberating scientific theory that suggests this is completely wrong. We are going to explore the idea that perception is not a window, it is a user interface. We are going to look at the interface theory of perception, championed by cognitive scientist Dr. Donald Hoffman. This theory argues that evolution has shaped our senses to hide the truth from us, not to show it. It suggests that space, time, and physical objects are just the desktop icons of a cosmic operating system. And if this is true, then your body is not you. Your body is just the avatar you are using to navigate the data. And the question of immortality shifts from, does my body survive, to, does the player survive when the game is over? Welcome back to the edge of the unknown. I am Theodore, the researcher, and tonight we are going to play the most dangerous game of all, the game of deconstructing the I. If you are finding peace in these nightly explorations of our existence, and if you want to join our growing community of curious souls seeking the truth in the dark, please take a moment to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. It is a simple click for you, but it helps us keep this lighthouse burning for everyone who is lost in the fog of the modern world. Thank you. Now, let us take a deep breath, release the tension in our faces, and prepare to look behind the screen. Let us start with a metaphor that Dr. Hoffman uses, because it is perfect for our digital age. Imagine you are working on your computer. You see a blue rectangular icon on the desktop labeled My Thesis. It sits in the lower right corner. If you click it, it opens. Now, ask yourself, is the file inside the computer actually blue? Is it actually rectangular? Is it actually located in the lower right corner of the hard drive? Of course not. The reality of the file is a complex stream of ones and zeros, electromagnetic charges on a silicon disk. If the computer showed you the reality, the millions of lines of binary code, you would never be able to write your thesis. You would be overwhelmed. The computer hides the truth and shows you a simple, useful lie. The blue icon. The icon is not true, but it is helpful. It allows you to interact with the hidden reality without understanding its complexity. Hoffman argues that evolution has done exactly the same thing to us. For billions of years, natural selection has not favored creatures that see reality as it truly is. It has favored creatures that see what they need to survive. If you are a primitive human and you see a lion, you do not need to know the quantum truth of the lion, that it is a cloud of probability waves, mostly empty space, governed by the Schrödinger equation. You need to see a lion icon that says, "Danger, run." Evolution has built a headset for us. This headset renders the infinite, complex quantum data of the universe into simple 3D icons. An apple, a rock, a tiger, a planet. This means that space-time is not the stage of reality. Space-time is the desktop. Physical objects are not the truth. They are the icons. The moon is a data structure that we render as a white sphere when we look at it. When we look away, the icon disappears, and the data returns to the unrendered file system. This sounds incredibly like the participatory universe we discussed in previous chapters, but it adds a biological reason for why the illusion is so strong. We are trapped in the interface because it keeps us alive. But here is the twist that leads to immortality. If the physical world is just an interface, then what is your body? Look at your hand. It seems real. It seems to be you. But in Hoffman's theory, your body is just another icon on the desktop. It is the avatar you use to manipulate the other icons. When you play a video game, you control a character. If the character falls off a cliff and dies, the character is gone from the screen. But you, the player holding the controller, are perfectly fine. You are not inside the screen. You are outside the system, observing it. This connects directly with the ancient Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self. For 2,500 years, Buddhist monks have meditated on the idea that the ego, the solid feeling of being a separate person, is an illusion. They teach that there is no permanent self inside the mind, only a stream of changing sensations, thoughts, and perceptions. Modern neuroscience agrees. When we scan the brain, we cannot find a center where the self lives. There is no Captain Kirk sitting in the pineal gland. There is just a distributed network of processing. But if there is no self inside the biology, and if the biology is just an icon, then who is experiencing the illusion? Who is the player? This brings us to the concept of the witness, or pure awareness. In many spiritual traditions, and increasingly in theories of consciousness like idealism, there is a distinction between the contents of consciousness, thoughts, feelings, sights, and the container of consciousness, the awareness itself. The contents are the game. The awareness is the player. The contents are constantly changing. You're happy, then sad. You're young, then old. You're seeing red, then blue. But the awareness, the I am, never changes. It is the silent, empty screen upon which the movie plays. If we take the interface theory seriously, then death is simply the moment where the avatar is deleted from the desktop. The icon of the body is dragged to the trash bin, but the consciousness that was witnessing the avatar does not die, because it was never in the desktop to begin with. It was the system running the desktop. Think about the simulation hypothesis that is so popular in Silicon Valley right now. Tech billionaires like Elon Musk argue that we are likely living in a computer simulation created by an advanced civilization. It is a cold, technological idea, but if you strip away the sci-fi language, it is almost identical to what the mystics have said for millennia. The Hindus call it Maya, the great illusion. They say the world is a play, a drama enacted by the cosmic spirit. The simulation theory says the world is code. Hoffman says the world is an interface. They are all saying the same thing. The physical world is not the fundamental reality. It is a secondary layer, a rendering. And if reality is a rendering, then you are the source code. Or rather, you are the light shining through the code. This perspective solves the problem of non-existence we touched on earlier. You cannot imagine being dead, because being dead is a contradiction in terms. The player exists outside the time of the game. When the game ends, the player typically wakes up. Maybe our entire life, from birth to death, is just a single session in a much larger, much stranger existence. Maybe we put on the headset of Theodore or Sarah to experience limitation, to experience fear, to experience love. Because in our natural state of infinite awareness, those things are impossible. This is the cosmic game theory. It suggests that the one infinite mind, God, the universe, the quantum field, breaks itself into billions of fragments and forgets who it is, just for the thrill of remembering again. We are the universe playing hide-and-seek with itself. We hide inside these biological avatars, behind these eyes, and we pretend to be separate. We pretend to be mortal, but deep down, in the quiet moments of the night, we feel the truth. We feel that we are older than our bodies. We feel that we are vast. There is a famous thought experiment in quantum physics called Wigner's friend. It is an extension of the Schrödinger's cat paradox. Imagine Eugene Wigner, a Nobel Prize physicist, has a friend in a lab who measures a quantum particle. For the friend inside the lab, the particle collapses to a definite state. But for Wigner, standing outside the locked door of the lab, the friend and the particle are both in a superposition of states until Wigner opens the door. It implies that there is an infinite chain of observers. Who observes Wigner? Who observes the observer? This chain must end somewhere. It must end in a universal observer, a fundamental consciousness that holds the entire universe in existence by witnessing it. This is the omega point, the final realization. If you are a fragment of that universal observer, then you are the one holding the universe together. You are the eye of the storm. Let us return to the interface theory. If space and time are just data structures, then distance is not real. This explains the entanglement we spoke of. In a video game, two characters might be on opposite sides of the map, miles apart. But in the computer's RAM, the data for their locations is right next to each other. They are processed by the same chip. This is why you can feel the pain of a loved one instantly, even if they are across the ocean. In the interface, you are far apart. In the source code, you are adjacent. You are touching. This also reframes the tragedy of losing someone. When someone dies, their icon vanishes from your interface. You can no longer click on them. You can no longer interact with their avatar. This causes immense pain to our avatar. But the connection in the source code, the love, is not broken. The data is still there. The consciousness that animated them has simply logged off this server. I want you to try a difficult visualization. Look at your hand again. Try to see it not as a solid object made of meat and bone, but as a cloud of sensory data. You feel warmth, that is data. You see pink and beige, that is data. You feel pressure, that is data. Your brain is painting this hand in real time. Now try to find the you that is looking at the hand. Turn your attention backward. Look for the looker. You cannot find it, can you? You cannot see your own eyes without a mirror. You cannot see your own consciousness. You can only be it. This is the great secret. The self is not an object you can find. It is the space in which everything else appears. It is the nothingness that holds the everything. And because it is nothing, no thing, it cannot be broken. It cannot be cut. It cannot be burned. It cannot die. Swords cannot pierce it. Fire cannot burn it. Water cannot wet it. Wind cannot dry it. It is the ancient, unborn, undying witness. This realization is the ultimate safety. It means that no matter what happens to the world, no matter what happens to the body, the eye is safe. We are like the screen of a movie theater. The movie can show a raging fire, but the screen does not burn. The movie can show a drowning ocean, but the screen does not get wet. You are the screen. The life you are living is the movie. Enjoy the movie. Cry at the sad parts. Laugh at the funny parts. Scream at the scary parts. But never forget that you are the screen. As we approach the end of our journey, we have one final step to take. We have deconstructed the body, the brain, the universe, and the self. We have arrived at the conclusion that we are immortal, non-local, quantum consciousness playing a game of existence. But where is this game going? Is there a goal? Is there a destiny? In the final chapter, we are going to look at the omega point and the future of consciousness. We are going to explore the idea that the universe is evolving toward a specific destination, a moment of maximum complexity and maximum consciousness, where all the separate minds merge back into one. We will talk about the concept of the big crunch or the big freeze, and how life might survive the end of the universe itself by sublimating into pure energy. We will ask, are we building God? The night is almost over. The dawn is coming. But the light of the mind is brighter than any sun. You are the player. You are the witness. You are the interface and the code. Rest in the safety of your own awareness. We have arrived at the final shore of our great ocean. Together, we have traversed the strange and beautiful landscapes of existence, from the microscopic quantum cathedrals vibrating inside your neurons to the holographic boundaries of the cosmos, where the history of all things is written in light. We have dismantled the illusion of the solid body, unmasked the deception of linear time, and dared to ask if the universe itself is a living mind in which we are merely drifting thoughts. We have found safety in the idea that information cannot be destroyed, and we have found wonder in the possibility that our consciousness is older than the stars. But every journey must have a destination. A story is defined by its ending. And so, the final question we must face tonight is not about where we came from or what we are, but where we are going. Is the universe simply drifting toward a cold, dark death, expanding forever until every star burns out and every atom is isolated in the void? Or is there a different destiny? Is there a secret purpose to this 14 billion year explosion of complexity? Tonight, we are going to explore the theory of the omega point. It is a vision that combines the hardest edges of theoretical physics with the deepest intuitions of mysticism. It suggests that the universe is not falling apart. It is falling together. It suggests that we are evolving toward a specific moment in the distant future, a moment of maximum complexity, maximum connection, and maximum consciousness, where all the separate minds of the cosmos will merge back into a single, infinite, and eternal awareness. We are going to ask, are we building God? It is a profound honor to have you with me for this final chapter. I am Theodore, the researcher, and if this series has touched something in you, if it has helped you feel a little less alone in the vastness of the dark, I would be deeply grateful if you would subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It allows us to keep asking these big questions and to keep building this sanctuary of curiosity. Thank you for walking this path with me. Now, let us turn our eyes to the far future, to the end of time itself. To understand the omega point, we must first look at the arrow of history. When we look at the physical universe through the lens of thermodynamics, we see a law called entropy. This is the second law of thermodynamics, and it is bleak. It states that in a closed system, disorder always increases. Energy spreads out. Things break down. The coffee gets cold. The mountain crumbles. The star runs out of fuel. According to this law, the inevitable fate of the universe is the heat death, a state of absolute equilibrium where nothing happens forever. It is a universe of cold ash. But when we look at the history of life, we see the exact opposite arrow. We see an arrow of increasing order. We see an arrow of rising complexity. The universe began as a chaotic soup of hot plasma. Then, against the odds, it cooled and organized into atoms. Then those atoms organized into stars and galaxies. Then, in the cold corners of space, complex molecules formed. Then came the single cell. Then the multicellular organism. Then the animal with a nervous system. Then the conscious human. Then the web of language, culture, and technology that connects us. Do you see the pattern? While the physical matter is spreading out, the information is clumping together. Consciousness is becoming denser, faster, and more interconnected. The French philosopher and Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who dedicated his life to reconciling evolution with spirituality, noticed this trajectory in the early 20th century. He saw that the Earth evolved through layers. First, there was the geosphere, the rock. Then came the biosphere, the living skin of plants and animals. And now, he argued, we are building the new sphere, a skin of thought, a web of consciousness enveloping the planet. Chardin predicted that this evolution would not stop with humans. He believed that the new sphere would continue to tighten, driven by love and the need for connection, until it reached a final point of unification. He called this the Omega point. At this point, all the individual consciousnesses of the universe would merge into a single hyper-conscious entity. This entity would be personal because it contains all persons, but it would also be universal. It would be a state of pure spirit, completely liberated from the constraints of matter and time. Chardin believed that this Omega point was what religions have always called God, not a creator who started the process from the outside, but a destination that pulls the process from the future. God is not the Alpha at the beginning. God is the Omega at the end. For a long time, scientists dismissed this as poetry. But in recent decades, physicists like Frank Tipler and futurists like Ray Kurzweil have given the Omega point a technological upgrade. They look at the exponential growth of computing power, the dawn of artificial intelligence, and the possibility of brain-computer interfaces, and they see the mechanism for Chardin's vision. We are already beginning to merge our minds. The Internet is a proto-new sphere. We are outsourcing our memories to the cloud. We are communicating instantaneously across the globe. Soon, we may be able to link our brains directly, sharing thoughts and emotions without the clumsy filter of language. Imagine a future, perhaps millions of years from now, where this process reaches its limit. Imagine a civilization that has colonized the galaxies, turning all the dead matter of the stars into computronium, matter organized for the sole purpose of processing information. Imagine that every atom in the universe has been woken up and integrated into a single, vast network of mind. In such a universe, the distinction between physics and thought would vanish completely. The universe would literally be a giant brain. But what about the heat death? How can this giant brain survive the freezing of the cosmos? The physicist Freeman Dyson proposed a solution known as Dyson's eternal intelligence. He argued that, as the universe cools, a conscious civilization could slow down its metabolism. It could think slower. By hibernating for long periods and using the last dregs of energy from black holes or decaying protons, a civilization could stretch its subjective time to infinity. Even if the physical universe dies, the experience of the consciousness could go on forever. In the final moments of the cosmos, looking into the face of absolute zero, life could generate an infinite number of thoughts. And here is where the quantum consciousness theory we have explored connects with the cosmic destiny. If consciousness is quantum information and the universe is a hologram, then the capacity of the universe to store information is determined by its surface area. As the universe expands, its surface area grows. Paradoxically, the emptier the universe gets, the more information it can hold. The hard drive of the cosmos gets bigger as it gets colder. This leads to a staggering possibility. Perhaps the omega point is not a place in time, but a state of information density. Perhaps when the universe has exhausted all its physical energy, it will have sublimated all its reality into pure information. The physical body of the cosmos dies, but the mind of the cosmos, the accumulated memory of every life, every love, every sunset, every realization, detaches and becomes a self-sustaining entity of pure light. In this scenario, you are immortal because you are a permanent subroutine in the final mind of God. Nothing is lost. Your life was a necessary calculation in the great equation. Without you, the omega point could not be reached. You are a brick in the final cathedral. But there is another theory, one championed by our old friend Sir Roger Penrose, that offers a cyclical kind of immortality. It is called conformal cyclic cosmology, or CCC. Penrose argues that the Big Bang was not the beginning. It was just the transition point from a previous universe. And our universe will eventually become the Big Bang for the next one. How? It has to do with scale. Penrose points out that in the far, far future, when all the stars are gone and even the black holes have evaporated, the universe will contain only photons, particles of light. Photons have no mass, and because they have no mass, they do not experience time or distance. To a photon, the entire universe is a single point. Penrose argues that when the universe contains nothing but light, it forgets how big it is. The concepts of enormous and tiny lose their meaning because there is no matter to define the scale. In that moment of total forgetting, the infinitely large, cold, empty universe becomes mathematically identical to the infinitely small, hot, dense point of a singularity. The end becomes the beginning. The pop of the final photon is the bang of the new creation. A new universe is born from the ashes of the old. If this is true, then the universe is a phoenix. It is an eternal heartbeat. Expand, contract, expand, contract. And the question is, does any information survive the transition? Penrose suggests that maybe, just maybe, the gravitational waves from the giant black hole collisions of the previous aeon, the scars on the fabric of space-time, might imprint themselves on the new Big Bang. He claims to have found patterns in the cosmic microwave background radiation that are ghosts of the previous universe. If consciousness is fundamental, if it is woven into the geometry of space-time, then perhaps the soul of the universe carries over. Perhaps the lessons we learn, the love we generate, the complexity we build, somehow tunes the fine structure of the next cycle. We are not just living for ourselves. We are living to ensure that the next universe is a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more conscious, a little bit closer to the light. This brings us back to the individual, to you, lying in the dark, listening to a voice from a screen. What does all this cosmic grandeur mean for your fear of death? What does it mean for the grief you feel for those who have gone? It means that the story of separation is a lie. The idea that you are a lonely biological machine that runs for 80 years and then vanishes is a deception caused by the limitations of your interface. The science, the quantum mechanics, the neuroscience, the cosmology is pointing toward a different truth. You are a focal point of the universal consciousness. You are the universe observing itself from a specific coordinate in space and time. When you die, the coordinate is abandoned, but the observer remains. The mask is taken off, but the actor is untouched. The ancient mystic Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." Science is now giving us the equations to understand how that can be literally true. The holographic principle says the whole is in the part. The quantum field says the part is connected to the whole. The omega point says the many become the one. So, when you think about the future, do not see a grave. See a reunion. See the moment where the walls of the ego finally dissolve, and you realize that you were never Theodore. You were never Sarah. You were never David. You were always the light. You were always the silence. You were always the love that moves the sun and the other stars. We are building the omega point. With every kindness we show, with every truth we discover, with every moment of awe we allow ourselves to feel. We are the architects of eternity. And so, our journey comes to a close. But in a cyclic universe, every end is a beginning. You will wake up tomorrow morning, and the world will look the same. The coffee will still be hot, the traffic will still be loud, the bills will still be due. But I hope that behind the surface of the mundane, you will now see the shimmer of the miracle. I hope you will look at your hand and see the stardust. I hope you will look at the empty air and feel the quantum field. I hope you will look at the people around you and see the other masks of God. You are safe. You have always been safe. The universe does not make mistakes, and it does not throw away its children. Thank you for trusting me with your time and your curiosity. Thank you for exploring the dark with me. It has been the privilege of my life to speak to the silence in yours. Until we meet again in the next cycle, keep looking up, keep wondering, and never forget, you are not just in the universe. You are the universe. Good night, my friends, and goodbye for now.